it came on the heels of on Tim. We started off that record with Alex Chilton, and we were enamored with the sound of some of those records, obviously, and Big Star 3 was one of them. And we, I think we just kind of, it seemed, because he was available and Warner Brothers thought it was a good idea too, it just kind of seemed like go to Arden. It's a nice studio, it has history. What we're trying to achieve is our sound and stuff like that seemed to fit that little thing there. And it was after the debacle of Tim, which was quite substantial from my brother, all the way down the line to finishing that damn record. It made sense to everyone, so we went down there and did that. And I'm on 2 records with Jim. Lucky for me, actually, I just saw Luther last week, who haven't seen all that much, recently, because that dude is everywhere and I'm everywhere. But I actually got to talk to Jim on his dying bed with Luther. We were both in Spain. We met up. I was playing with Soul Asylum, playing bass with Soul Asylum, and we went to this festival in Spain, and the Black Crowes were on that. He was playing with them, and we found each other, and it actually was a very monumentous fucking occasion, that whole thing, to be honest with you. Not to get off on a tirade here, but we got to hanging out. He said, "Dad's in the hospital, man. He ain't gonna be around long. You want to talk to him?" It's like, "Yeah, let's call him up." So we did, and we had a really great chat, and it was really beautiful. And then, not that I had like a hatchet to bury with Black Crowes, but there was some shenanigans that went on that, when I made my first Bash and Pop record that put us at odds. And we sorted all that out right there too, because it was such a love fest, saying Luther and in Spain and talking Jim and his death and all this stuff. It was really great. And now I keep running into those guys, like, what's up? I ran into, like Richie Robinson at some outdoor market in New Orleans the other day. I'm like, what's going on? Well, yeah, because I got into town early and I knew they were in town and we were going to hook up and have dinner and stuff, but I was too tired, we were too burnt, and so I ended up running into him after talking to Chris the night before. I made it, running into him at the market the next day, and it's like, oh yeah, well, we'll try tonight, and then they had a cake, and it all went kind of crazy. But well, the funny thing about my last interactions with Jim are most notable, actually. I mean, he was like kind of a sort of the curmudgeonly sage, musical sage in our little replacements camp. And, he had stories, but you obviously knew, he was also a storyteller, So, you want to hear the stories and all the stuff, and he's going to be telling it in his Jim voice, But the funnier thing was, so, there's all this I don't know what to make of it. I always thought it was a nice compliment, but there was some comment he made about me being like the Keith Richards of the band or something like that. Anyway, he kind of held me in some kind of, esteem, worthy or not, when I went back to make my second record with him with a band called Perfect. He was giving me a lot of crap about, my band, and it was more like, well, dude, this isn't the Replacements, and I'm not trying to be like the Replacements. This is what we're doing. And he was just like, he came in one day and he just goes, we got kind of fed up. He walked in one day and we kind of called him out, like, what do you want us to do? Like, what do we, And he just looked at us. He goes, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and fuck you. And he turned around, he walked out of the studio, and we lost him for a day or so. He didn't come back, and we're like, give him some time. He'll be back. It was one of those things, but it was like, I don't know. And we finished the record, and it was a fun little record. And I think there was something in his head about what I had that I was not getting out because of the circumstances of the band or whatever. And I was like, dude, you're missing the whole fucking point. This is what I'm doing. This is my new thing. And maybe he didn't like this. I don't know. Maybe he didn't like the, I don't even know. But it was a fun thing, you know, the fuck you part. But he came back and we finished the record. But he was, you know, the thing about Jim was, it was always, you know, he always was holding court. One way, and he's either quiet and he's kind of cranky, or he's going to tell you something, you know. And you know, it's usually a pretty good one. Like, you know, he had some just bananas stories, but you can also read about a lot of that stuff. And geez, some of the stuff he told us about, you can check out on the. There's, funny enough, there was this one Keith Richards unauthorized biography that came out, I guess maybe in the 70s or something like that. And it was just a picture of Keith, and I think it's like this kind of picture, you know. And it talks a lot about Jim in that book a little bit. There's a part in that book about how they came to Muscle Shoals, and you know, Jim and this whole story of, you know, some debauchery, you know, in the Stone, the studio, and they brought the goods, if you know what I'm saying.
Were you guys hip to all of that before you worked with him the first time?
We knew some other stuff, but mostly, you know, mostly what we heard about, that we knew most of the stuff about, was more the big star stuff. And that, I mean, we heard all kinds of wacky stories about, you know, you know, Alex Chilton shooting, you know, heroin into his throat or whatever. I mean, all these wacky things that, like, you know, our stupid asses were like, whoa, that's crazy, and he made that kind of record? Well, watch this, you know. I you know, whatever the thinking was back then, we were just having fun with it, you know.
I hope this doesn't embarrass you, but that quote.
I'll let you know, you wouldn't be the first.
Just so people know, the quote from Jim Dickinson is, people say Keith Richards is the living embodiment of rock and roll. I'm sorry, but I know Keith Richards, and it's Tommy Stinson. Like, how are you supposed to digest something like that?
That's a whole lot of bluster. I don't know.
How'd you first hear that?
I don't remember where I heard that from, but I was like, really? What are you talking about? I'm just a little old fucking meat. You know, that's fucking Keith. You know, it's funny. It was a nice accolade, but yeah, wasn't quite feeling it, if you know what I mean. That's a hell of a step. Although, I mean, Keith is one of my favorite people on the planet. I mean, I've only met him a couple times, but God, what a sweetheart of a man, you know, and cool. We met him opening up for him in Madison Square Garden and stuff. It was the Replacements opening up for the Expensive Wine Rose tour. Actually, yeah. And it was around his 40th birthday, I think, in fact, even. And we got invited to his birthday party, and the author that wrote that book, Sympathy for the Devil, I think that's what it's called, was chasing us around. He was trying to corner Paul and fucking write the book or some shit. There was some funny business going on there with that. But I met him. We met him again down the road when we played the Jimmy Fallon show. And he was promoting his daughter's, I think it was a children's book, but he was there, and I got this great photo. He was, you know, he had his own little room and stuff like that, but he was really nice hanging out in the hallway and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there with, you know, my daughter, Ruby, who I think is all of maybe early 20s, like 12 years ago, something like that. So she's like 21. And here's a picture of me, Keith in the middle, and Ruby, and we're all three laughing our asses off. I don't remember what it was about, but, you know, he's just a sweet man, and just really just had love for everyone, it seemed, you know. Until you fuck with him the wrong way, I'm sure. Not good, but, you know, you get the point.
When you were playing Madison Square Garden, was that the very first time that you played there?
Yeah, we did it. We opened up for him on that tour. Then after that, we opened up for Elvis Costello. It was a cool gig. We had a lot of fun. Keith's crew was a little scary. I mean, those dudes they were all in it. All in all of it. I mean, a couple of them I think have even sobered up since then. If you know what I'm saying, it was kind of a thing. It was heavy though. I mean, you got Keith holding fort, holding it all down, and being nice and stuff like that. But that was a great record for him, and it was a really great outing for him. I think just to show people, like, yeah, that's the other half of that business. That's the one, So it was a very cool thing. They seemed receptive. I mean, it was a rock and roll audience. Funny enough, we probably fit that better than the Elvis Costello or definitely the Tom Petty tour that we tried to do. That was brutal, but yeah. Always been a Stones fan. From my day one, really, of getting into them and stuff. But I don't know if I would liken my musical inspiration to that so much. Like, I'm a Stones appreciator completely. I don't see much. I probably tried to steal more from Big Star than Stoned, if you know what I mean, especially around that time. What was funny about that first Bash and Pop record, I get all this kudos for it being, sort of really rock and roll-y and Stones-y, like whatever. But the reality was I was trying to make a Terry Reid record. And so I had the open E tuning and was doing this whole thing. And it wasn't like I was trying to really necessarily make a Terry Reid record, but if the two things, when I was going on to making that record, it was probably more Big Star Terry Reid than the Rolling Stones. And yeah, that's kind of my story about that.